Welcome back to Singapore Property Talk Law. We take a deep dive into the stories that matter, extracting the crucial information so you can get informed quickly and thoroughly.
Absolutely.
And hey, if you find these deep dives helpful, please do hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss out on future deep dives.
It definitely helps us out.
So today, we're looking at a really complex and, frankly, tragic case. It spans continents.
It really does. The death of Singaporean architect Audrey Fang in Spain.
Our mission here is to unpack the details surrounding her death and the investigation into the suspect, Mitchell Ong. We want to lay out the key information so you can get a clear picture of this developing story.
There's a lot to cover.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Right, so this story starts with what initially seemed like, a standard solo holiday. Audrey Fang, she's 39, an architect. She left Singapore on April 4th, 2024.
Headed for Zabia, Spain.
Exactly. She was due back home on April 12th.
But she never boarded that flight back. The last time anyone officially saw her was on hotel CCTV, April 9th, about 8:45 p.m.
Yeah, the footage shows her leaving the hotel, getting into a car.
And the really significant detail here, she left everything behind in her room, all her belongings.
That's a major red flag right there. Her family couldn't reach her from April 10th onwards.
So when she didn't land back in Singapore on the 12th, her brother went to the police here.
And they'd actually already flagged her as missing with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs the day before. On April 11th, they were clearly worried.
And the terrible irony is, while they were starting this frantic search, on April 10th, the very day she went silent.
A body was found, unidentified at first.
Where was this?
In a lorry park over in Abenia, which is in the Murcia region. Now, that's about 150 kilometers from her hotel in Gabia.
150 kilometers. That's like a 2-hour drive, roughly?
Yeah, roughly. And that distance, that immediately becomes a key point for investigators later on.
Just awful. And then the confirmation came.
Yes, on April 17th, the body was formally identified as Audrey Fang.
And the initial reports, they were grim.
Incredibly so. Signs of a very violent assault. A bladed weapon was involved. Reports mention over 30 stab wounds.
30.
And head trauma as well. The family later confirmed, when they had to do the identification, just how severe her injuries were. It must have been horrific for them.
So this wasn't just a missing person case anymore. This was clearly a homicide investigation.
Absolutely. And the focus pretty quickly shifted to finding who she might have been with who picked her up in that car.
Which leads us to the suspect.
Mitchell Ong, also Singaporean. Reports put his age at 43 or 44.
And he was arrested quite quickly, wasn't he?
Relatively, yes. The Spanish Civil Guard arrested him on April 16th, so just a week after Audrey was last seen alive.
Where did they find him?
In his hotel room, but in Alicante province, which is, again, notable for the distance about 80 kilometers from where Miss Fang was staying in Zabia.
And what do we know about him from the reports?
Well, descriptions mention he's tall, about 1.88 meters, quite muscular. Seems he had a taste for, let's say, opulent things. Expensive sneakers, for example. And they found a fair bit of cash in his room when they arrested him.
He then had his first court appearance.
On April 19th in Murcia, that's where he was formally identified as the suspect, and the judge ordered him into pretrial detention. Remand, basically.
Okay, so he's in custody. Now, the big question. What was the connection between them? How did Audrey Fang and Mitchell Ong know each other?
This is where it gets layered. According to friends who testified, they apparently met through some kind of social dating network.
Okay, and this wasn't a new acquaintance?
Not at all. These friends describe the relationship as being on and off for quite a while, since at least 2014, they suggested.
Wow, so nearly a decade.
Yeah. And the friends also believed that Audrey had, romantic feelings for Ong.
But there's a bit of a discrepancy, isn't there, what she told friends versus family?
Exactly. The sources point this out. She apparently told friends she was planning to meet Ong during her trip to Spain.
But her family?
She reportedly told them she might meet up with a former colleague, but didn't name Ong specifically, which is interesting.
And then the family made a discovery themselves, right, back in Singapore?
Yes. While going through her papers, they found documents, letters from the insurer AIA.
Relating to what?
2 investment-linked policies that Audrey had bought way back in 2015.
And the connection.
The agent listed on those policies was Ong Chong Yi.
Which is Mitchell Ong's Chinese name.
Correct. The family confirmed it. So this established a financial link between them going back years, long before this trip.
So the police were looking at both possible romantic and economic motives right from the start.
Seems so. The police notes mentioned exploring both angles, suggesting they saw the relationship wasn't simple.
Okay, let's pivot to the evidence itself. What have investigators actually found, according to the sources?
All right, let's break it down. Forensic and physical evidence first. We already mentioned the cause of death, those numerous stab wounds, over 30 reported, plus the head trauma. But here's a really significant finding mentioned. DNA from 2 different men was reportedly found on Audrey Fang's clothes.
2 men, not just Ong.
That's what the sources indicate. And that's huge. It immediately raises the possibility that maybe Ong wasn't acting alone. Or perhaps there's another explanation, but it definitely complicates the picture for the investigation.
Absolutely. What else on the physical side?
Footwear. They seized some limited edition sports sneakers from Ong's hotel room, high-end ones apparently.
Yeah.
These reportedly match footprints found near where the body was discovered. They noted the size, 48.5 European, which is quite large, and the price, over €900. Very distinctive.
Are they comparing soil samples too?
Yes, they're apparently comparing soil found on the sneakers with the soil and sandstone from the crime scene area in Abanila.
And there was testimony from an ex-girlfriend.
Right. She reportedly testified in court that she saw injuries on Ong's knees a couple of days after the alleged date of the killing when she met him in Spain. She also apparently described him as aggressive.
Okay, so that's the physical. What about circumstantial or digital evidence? CCTV.
Crucial here. We have the footage of Audrey leaving her hotel, getting into that car on April 9th.
And footage of Ong.
Yes, from his hotel in Alicante. Apparently, it shows him leaving around 5:45 p.m. on April 9th wearing one set of clothes.
And returning.
Returning much later, around 2 a.m. on April 10th, wearing different clothes. The timing is obviously key for investigators trying to piece together his movements.
Have they traced the car?
Reportedly, yes. Using CCTV and vehicle tracking data, they traced the car seen picking Audrey up. The route apparently went from near Ong's hotel in Alicante up to Zabia, where she was staying.
And then down to Abanil, where the body was found.
That's the reported route. And sources mention Ong's rental car itself was caught on CCTV in the specific lorry park area in Abanilla.
Mobile phone data, too.
Yep. Data from the phone companies reportedly put both Audrey's phone and Ong's phone in the same general area around the time the crime is believed to have happened.
And may be the most direct piece linking him to her belongings.
Her mobile phone. It was found in Ong's hotel room during the arrest.
Wow.
Plus, investigators are apparently wading through a massive amount of digital data, a terabyte, reportedly from hard drives and Ong's phone.
A terabyte. That is a huge amount of information. Could take ages to analyze.
It's immense. They'll be looking for any communication, plans, financial trails, anything relevant.
So all this evidence seems to be building a case, and like the police notes suggested early on, there's a strong focus now on potential motives beyond just the personal relationship, specifically money.
Exactly. The economic motive, as the police are calling it, has become a major focus. And a key piece here was a discovery on Audrey Fang's iPad.
What did they find?
A note. It apparently named a longtime friend and trusted confidant as the beneficiary for her CPF savings.
CPF, Central Provident Fund Savings in Singapore.
Correct. The note also mentioned something about granting this person a friendly loan of US $50,000.
And this longtime friend, it was Ong.
It was later confirmed. Audrey Fang had officially nominated Mitchell Ong as the sole beneficiary of her CPF savings.
The sole beneficiary.
That's what the sources report.
When did this happen?
The timing is incredibly significant. She made this nomination in person on October 4th, 2023.
October 2023. So only about 6 months before she was killed.
Precisely. And around that same period, she had apparently moved a large sum. It reportedly came from cashing out some of those investment-linked products, possibly the ones he sold her years ago.
So how much are we talking about in total in her CPF?
The reported figure is around poor $498,000, almost $500,000 Singapore dollars.
$500,000 nominated to him just months before her death. That's quite something.
It certainly provides a potential motive that investigators are taking very seriously. There was even a reported WhatsApp message from October 2023 where Ong apparently thanked her for making the nomination.
And what about Ong's own financial situation? Does his background shed any light?
Well, sources describe him, as we know, as a former insurance agent. He sold those policies to Audrey in 2015. He also presented himself as some kind of financial expert, apparently had a website promoting this, though it's now defunct.
Any other business ventures?
Involved in several, it seems, but most are also defunct. listed as a private investor in things like EDM and cryptocurrency. He does hold one active directorship in an older insurance firm.
So a bit of a mixed picture financially?
Potentially. And remember his ex-girlfriend's testimony? She specifically mentioned he was having financial difficulty. So you put that together, his background, the alleged financial troubles, and then this nearly $500,000 CPF nomination landing just months before.
Yeah, the possible economic motive looks quite strong from that angle.
It's why the Spanish court has officially asked Singapore for detailed banking, property, and financial records for both of them.
And there was another wrinkle, something about recent investments in Spain.
Yes, reports also mention that Audrey might have made some recent investments or transfers to an unknown third party in Spain. So the financial picture might be even more complex. Investigators are likely looking into that too.
How did Audrey's family react to the CPF news?
Complete shock, according to reports. They apparently had no idea about this nomination, and they've made it very clear they intend to contest it legally.
What's the CPF board's stance?
They've stated they'll hold on to the funds until the legal case in Spain is concluded, and crucially, Singapore law prevents a convicted killer from benefiting from their victim's CPF savings. So if Ong were convicted of her murder...
He wouldn't get the money anyway.
Correct.
Okay, let's shift to the legal process itself in Spain. Where does that stand?
Right now, Mitchell Ong is in pretrial detention remand. The judge decided he should stay in custody.
Why? What was the reasoning?
Primarily flight risk. He has no real ties or roots in Spain, and the judge noted he seemed to have the financial means to potentially leave the country, referencing that cash found in his room.
In the prosecution, what are they pushing for?
Both the public prosecutor and the private prosecution, that's the lawyer representing the Fang family's interests, are aiming for a murder charge. They believe the evidence collected so far is sufficient.
What kind of sentence could a murder conviction carry in Spain?
The range reported is typically 15 to 25 years in prison, though the family's lawyer mentioned the possibility, depending on findings like malice aforethought, of what's called reviewable life imprisonment. It's Spain's most severe sentence.
What about Ong's defense?
He maintains his innocence, reportedly insisting he didn't kill her. His lawyer has argued for the case to be dismissed, or at least for new proceedings, like getting his statement or more phone analysis.
Has he given a statement?
According to sources, he's chosen to remain silent during the investigation phase so far.
But the family's lawyer feels they have a strong case.
Yes. Mr. Manuel Martinez has publicly stated he believes the evidence is strong enough to prove malice aforethought, which is that premeditated intent needed for the most serious murder charge.
Now, there was this really interesting complex development about potentially sending him back to Singapore, right? The deportation question.
Yes, that added a whole other layer. Spain's immigration authorities, the General Commissariat for Aliens and Borders, actually put in a request for Ong to be deported back to Singapore to stand trial there.
And the family's lawyer supported this.
He did, yes.
Why would they want that? What's the significance?
The major difference is the potential penalty. If tried and convicted of murder in Singapore, the death penalty could be applicable.
Whereas in Spain, it's prison time, even if it's a very long sentence.
Exactly. A stark contrast.
So what was the argument against deporting him? Ong's lawyer must have strongly opposed it.
Very strongly. Her argument was that deporting him would violate Spanish law and fundamental international treaties Spain is party to.
Like what?
The European Convention on Human Rights, for one.
Okay.
And, critically, the principle of non-refoulement.
Which means?
Basically, you can't send someone back to a country where they face a real risk of persecution, torture, or, in this context, the death penalty, which Europe opposes. She argued he must be tried under Spanish law with Spanish due process.
So what happened with that request?
It was blocked. On May 28, 2024, a Spanish judge ruled against the deportation.
On what grounds?
Primarily due to the death penalty concerns in Singapore. The judge ruled Ong didn't meet the criteria for immediate expulsion under Spanish law, which often targets less serious offenses or specific immigration violations. The request also included a 10-year ban from Spain for Ong, which presumably is also off the table for now.
So barring any appeals or changes, the trial, if it happens, will be in Spain.
That's how it looks currently, yes. The legal process continues there.
It's just impossible to imagine what Audrey Fang's family's been going through this whole time.
Absolutely heart-wrenching, from the initial panic when they couldn't reach her.
To flying all the way to Spain themselves to look for her.
And then the devastating task of identifying her body. Seeing the extent of her injuries firsthand, they spoke about the shock and trauma of that.
Then flying back to Singapore, having to hire a lawyer overseas to navigate a foreign legal system.
And on top of all that grief, they get hit with the news about the insurance policies from years ago, and then this completely unexpected CPF nomination. More shock, more questions,
They're clearly determined to find answers, though, contesting the CPF nomination.
and taking legal steps in Singapore, too. They've applied for what's called a grant of letters of administration.
What does that allow them to do?
It gives them the legal authority to manage her estate, her affairs. Crucially, it should allow them access to her financial records. They're hoping this will shed light on her dealings, especially with Ong, maybe explain these financial connections.
It just sounds like an exhausting quest for truth on top of immense grief.
Their stated desire is clear. They want closure, they want answers, and they want whoever's responsible held accountable for a very long time. Justice for Audrey.
It's a case with so many layers, spanning personal relationships, complex finances, international borders, and different justice systems.
Definitely still evolving as the investigation continues in Spain.
So, wrapping this up, what does it all mean?
Well, we've taken a deep dive through the available information. We've traced the sad timeline from Audrey's trip to the grim discovery, the arrest of Mitchell Ong, the evidence gathered both physical and digital, and the emergence of this significant potential economic motive alongside the relationship history.
Yeah, the sources really paint a picture of these tangled financial links, some dating back years, others surfacing very recently before her death, a complicated personal history. And then evidence converging from CCTV, phone data, forensics, all playing out against these two different legal systems with vastly different potential outcomes.
The contrast between potential death penalty in Singapore versus a long prison sentence in Spain really highlights the international complexities.
It really does. And it brings us to a final thought, maybe something for you, the listener, to consider. When you look at everything we've discussed, the long on-off relationship, the timing and size of that CPF nomination, the financial background described, the specific evidence like the phone location, the DNA, what single aspect of this case strikes you as the most pivotal piece in trying to understand the why behind this tragedy?
It's a heavy question, and likely one the investigators and courts are still grappling with. There are clearly many facets still being examined.
Indeed. A very complex and ongoing case. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive on Singapore Property Talk Law.